it doesn't necessarily matter how much of this information someone actually knows. What really makes a difference to me, especially with their tone, is how much they're surrendering to what they do know. You know,
Mm.
those that really, again, authentic, those that are really surrendering, those that are really trying or experimenting or testing, that's where you get through this journey. You don't get it in how much you know or you don't know or whatever, or blah blah blah. It's about that surrendering.
Right. Hi,
Hello.
Tim Kester Hart. So I wanted to ask you
Mhm.
to tell me, first of all, a little bit about your design. Just a brief
Yeah.
basics.
Um, I'm a projector by type, um, classified within the mental projector, or the correct original term, the environmental projector. And I have a unique design, which is incredibly individual in that I only have the genius freak unconscious, the 2343, which is known as the perfect projector, so Ra says.
Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to actually talk to you about is being a projector
Ah,
as a overall thing. Now, there's some questions that I have for you in terms of that, but there's something that I want to start with, really. Like, it's something that I ask of many people. It's basically if you compare your life before you got into the design
uh-huh.
and now, what has changed, or what's been the most fundamental change in your life in terms of coming to design?
The most fundamental, I don't know, it's more of a list. Um, the easiest way is, what it's like if you've ever gone camping or hiking and you've got a big rucksack, and you know what it's like when you get to your destination and you actually oh, take that weight
Mm.
off. That's the thing that
Mm-hmm.
you we all, or I for myself, you're asking me, um, I used to carry a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility, a lot of burden from just society, from parents, from life, etc. And human design, from my first reading, sort of instantly went, okay, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. And it was like, oh, so that's the thing which is it grabs you. If you get to hear this information, you get a reading or what have you, when you first get that, you get that first realization of, hang on, why have I been doing all this shit?
Mm-hmm. So another thing is, like, I often speak to other generators, yeah, and so it's easy to maybe ask them in terms of energy, like, okay, how, like, for a generator, it's very different how they use their energy after they got into the design. So I was trying to think of a way to ask you the same, because you don't really have a sacral center, so you don't really have the consistent energy in there. But I wanted to know how you're dealing with the energy that you get from the outside, from generators, from other energetical beings. How you're dealing with it now in comparison to before as a projector.
um, Great question. Obviously, in my scenario, the environment is my authority. Um, I the basic bond between like a generator and a projector is that I potentially can guide them. I can assist them in the efficient use of their energy. And as a result of that, they're sort of pay me with sort of a little bit of a charge from their energy. And then I get the real commission if they then sort of tell someone that this person was able to guide me, because then I get the success. The success is like sunshine for a projector. You know, there's nothing else that describes it really better than sunshine. You know, when you get that success, when I did mention something to that generator, and yeah, at the time he gave me a little bit of energy or what have you. But then when I hear from someone else, or I see that he told someone else what I was able to do for him, that success, it's like, oh yeah, sunshine, man. Oh yeah, this is nice, you know. And so yeah, if that's sort of with the environmental projector, you know, it you get to realize, or I've got to realize through a lot of hard work and mistakes, that it's not my energy. You know, projectors are here to glide. We're here to slide around. You know, we're not here to necessarily do anything. We're here to recognize. You know, so if I can recognize where there is some energy that isn't being used efficiently, that I can sort of, you know, guide, ask a question. You know, questions are the weapons of choice for a projector, you know. And so if I can assist when, again, the environment is telling me whether I can approach, whether I can't approach, you know, because all I'm here to do is to recognize. And if I get that feedback through the environment, or of course the direct invitation, and that direct invitation is correct for me to accept, then I will engage. But it's not my energy, you know, that there is none of my energy as such. There is just my outer authority, which is basically my experience. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but obviously, just to go back to how I was previously, where I think you were also wanting some aspects, you know, that's where I was all in the sort of the open ego, or the demands of the other, the proving, you know, oh, why can't I do this? Everybody else can do this, you know, and that self-frustration, you know, that backpack again that's adding up, you know. So yeah, it's not even chalk and cheese. It's just such a vast duality between then and now.
You've been in this journey for quite some time, haven't you? How long have you been doing this?
Yeah, it's 12. I'm coming up to my 12th year around Christmas.
Okay.
So
I wanted to go back into what you said about being in a referring to being environmental projector.
mhm.
So what do you relate that to? Is it because your definition is in the notes, or is it something else?
There is that specifically in my case, but this is one of you're going to get me started off on the Hansel and Gretel thing. Maybe I'll save that to later on if the time flows. Projectors themselves, we're the non-energy type with the manifestor, but obviously the projector is on the ascendancy. You know, the pure or the pure frequency of the projector has only been on this plane for 130 years. Yeah, so it's very fresh, it's very new. Now, the environment is everything. Yeah. There is so much information in the environment, so much information. And the projector, given that we do not have the life force, we do not have a motor for certainly environmental projectors, where this aspect really becomes it's everything. Projectors are here to they can project. They're designed to be conditioned, the only type that's here to be conditioned properly. From that conditioning, they get to experience the difference through where that consistency or inconsistency. This is where we become wise. And this is where we can actually guide, because we're used to whether it's on or it's off or it's this or it's that. With the environmental projector, which is the original term for a definition when you only have the ajna and one or above, or all three as the only definition centers, this is the environmental projector. The soundboarding is only when we have an invitation, when we actually need to discuss something for ourselves. The rest of the time, if you're acting correctly, you are taking in so much information around you, you don't need to soundboard. You only soundboard when something actually recognizes us and actually formally invites us. And in that instance, that's when we need a few friends or a few people that we trust. And then through that process of talking to several people who we trust, do we then listen to the tone and the frequency of what it is that we're saying? Because we can talk, oh lady, you've got to listen for it. It's not necessarily the words, it's the way in which it's said.
Well, this actually comes to my next question, because as a mental projector, you have a very interesting inner authority. I mean, your strategy is the same as for any projector: wait for invitation. But the authority is this soundboarding. So I wanted to ask you something about that, and you already told me a bit. But do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there is obviously a lot of misinformation these days, and in a way, we've all been in a city where we're traveling around and we see a busker. Yeah. Now, buskers make some noise, but we all know the difference when you actually hear a really good violinist, or a really good saxophone player, someone who's a real artist, who's playing that frequency, that's actually got that je ne sais quoi. They're rarer than people who are just making noise. Yeah, they're busking, yeah, they're making noise, but they're not really on note. They're not on that frequency, that tone. And everything is tone if you really know your human design. So I see a lot of people having good intentions, really trying hard and suffering with trying to be and do something which they've not even had the proper instructions for. In my education, and I'm very fortunate that I've actually had eight ex-students of RAL assist me in my learning process. So I've been very fortunate to be sort of close to source, if you like. Excuse me. So I got the coordinates, I got the landmarks, and from those landmarks, I've been able to navigate myself. This is the whole thing of human design. It is a map, you see the whole map and everything, and it's logical, it's a mechanical system. Yeah. If the landmarks haven't been relocated, you're going to find your way, the way in which sailors did for centuries with the night sky. They're fixed positions. You can always get your trajectory, you can always get your bearing. But if someone comes along and it has moved the landmarks, then everybody that comes after is going to get lost. It's very simple. And I do feel for a lot of people who are trying, but they haven't been told the coordinates. They haven't been told how simple this is. They all think there's so much that they've got to get. Oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. When the truth is, you've got to let so much go. You just got to let go and see the landmarks. But it's whether or not you're fortunate enough within your fractal, your network, whether you're actually getting, that really good musician, that violinist who's just earning some more money, for his room, opposed to just the guy just learned the guitar last week and he's trying his best to be a rock star.
I wanted to say something about that because this frequency that you talk about
Mm-hmm.
is really something that even though I'm a good old emotional generator with an open throat and all of that, I really I listen for the frequency,
Mm-hmm.
and even in myself, or mostly in myself, because I'm concentrated on myself. I'm focused on myself. So especially when I hear back some of the videos or audios or something that I've done, is how do I sound? And then I'm like, oh, that's really off. Oh, I really don't like that. I'm not gonna do that. And then other times it's like, cool. But that's really something that I have over the years I have started to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to do in the moment, obviously, but it's something that I really resonate when you speak about this frequency or this. Is it off or is it like, I don't know. I like that.
It's again the patterns and the poetry and the synchronization of this synthesis. It's there is nothing more or nothing better, and as I think that I'm quite a radical purist. I'm devoted to human design. I don't bring in astrology. Personally, I find it hilarious that people talk about astrology when that was an old 7-centered system and human design is a 9-centered system. It surprises me how many people still do not realize that human design is an inverted calculation of the bearing compared to astrology. They're completely different things. It's very much like, okay, you're Belgium, but are you Flemish or French speaking? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with the tones, and specifically you were saying about your voice and how you express differently. Well, this is again the principle or the mechanics of the energy, going back to the previous question. My energy is very different depending upon who I'm with, because obviously being unconscious with only one defined channel, I mirror people. I am very much who the other is, and it's like to a certain degree, I sometimes sort of see myself as a tornado, and that is to say that a tornado is very calm in the eye. It's very still in the center of it at its core. But at times it can be quite horrific, the vortex that's going on around it. Now, depending upon if I go into an environment, if I'm like a low pressure and I go into a high pressure, then that tornado might start kicking up. But it's not me. I'm very calm. It's the people around me. And vice versa in all different situations, so I've had people in my experience who have accused me of all sorts of things, and people who think this of that and whatever, and but it's like they don't necessarily understand that mental projectors, we are to a degree a representation of what they are. And if I'm making sense here, that everybody should also recognize this within their own tone, within their own feelings. Self-reflected consciousness is what this whole thing is about. You know, you can call that this thing, that thing. You know, there's so many layers within this, as you're well aware. But the basic premise is self-reflective consciousness. When you can be one-on-one with the correct other, you get to learn yourself by deducting what it is that they are. This is the whole thing. And it comes from voice. It doesn't come from texting or chatting, you know, online, what have you. You've got to have voice. You know, voice is everything. You know.
That reminds me, I don't know if you listened to the recent talk with John and Teresa about tones. So it just reminds me of that, because I spoke with Luca and he was like, yeah, it's actually the seventh tone or whatever, seventh sense that they were talking about. It's actually the sound. It's the acoustic, which is what I relate to what you're saying. You know, it's really about what we hear. How, you know, it's a cognition that we take in, and the frequency in that. So I'm just like, I see these synchronicities in my life, like, like things tend to happen like all at once, or I hear about the one thing from different angles at the same, like similar times. So that's my observation. I wanted to ask you, do you have something else?
Just quickly, you reminded me with cathedrals and organs, you know, organs, they are a real mystical device. A lot of people don't necessarily understand how special they are. The way in which like a piano tuner, they used to have these organ tuners. And the way they would do it is that they would have just a stick. You know, they would just go out and grab a branch or what have you. And the person would literally throw this stick around the room. That's how they would tune the organ. So I'm serious, because you've got the acoustics of the room, and throwing the stick around the room, and depending upon how the echoes and the resonances would be with that single stick in all different areas of the room, again, environment, you know, then the alterations would occur in with the pipes and the whistle valves of the release of the air and everything. You know, just a simple stick is how you actually tune an organ. It's got nothing to do with the person's ear, and just like a piano tuner would. It actually needs the environment, that acoustic, to actually do it. And I just thought that was a relevant point, or may be of interest to someone.
That's cool. So I'm just kind of going off. Well, I'm not, because I don't know what I wanted to do anyway, and I can't plan very well, and my plans don't work. So I came up with the question just now. Like I see this question quite a lot in human design forums and things. So there's two types that don't have inner authority, or two designs, let's say. One is a reflector. They have the lunar authority, and then there's a mental projector. So you have the soundboarding or no authority, or however it's described in different places. And I have seen people compare these two designs, and I understand why, because you know what you said about the mirroring and the you know, environmental stuff. But from a perspective of a mental projector, how would you describe that you're different from a reflector?
You know, projectors are closer to manifestors than reflectors. You know, again, you learn the most within the system when you keep things simple. You know, the whole map is there. It's logical. It works. It's synchronized. There's no need to imagine something, try and create something. You either see it or you don't. So, keeping it simple, reflectors are lunar. They're lunar. There is no point in any of the three other types, you know, trying to compare themselves. There's one type, you know, and let alone the fact you've probably met some reflectors like I have. I have never met one reflector that is anything like any other reflector, you know? So they really are such an anomaly. And even reflectors can't necessarily relate to reflectors, you know, not the way in which you, especially as a pure emotional generator, can respond to another generator, you know. So the whole aspect of this, I can understand that when you're describing a chart with its black definition or its red definition, you may use that terminology as reflector, but that is purely for want of a better word in terms of language, you know. And in my experience, you know, the use of language or the requirement for like almost like a dictionary, because depending upon whether you're talking to someone from Europe or America, a word is going to be interpreted differently. You know, there is, you know, so many areas where you can just go off in different directions, even though you're meaning the same thing. But again, it comes from how we've been conditioned to use that word originally. So for me, with my experience, it annoys me because it's inefficient. You know, it's people not really keeping it simple. It's again not looking at the landmarks, not realizing, yeah, reflectors are lunar. Got no fucking idea what that's like. Do not even begin to try and conceptualize it, because you, by design, we don't have the mental capacity or the requirement to understand what they're like. We're here to try and find out who we are ourselves through self-reflected consciousness when we're only one-on-one with the correct other. You know, keep it simple. What are you trying to create something new for? You know, but yeah.
That's really interesting because, you know, like I've been like, I know quite a few reflectors actually. It's really interesting, but I don't know what they are, but I still don't like. It's really, they're so, like you say, they're all so different, and yeah, okay, you can kind of clump them together in this term of being reflector as no definition, but then I still like, I don't know, like I couldn't describe like what it is like to be one or how you should live as one, you know, like it's really, well, you can't really tell that to anybody, you know, everybody's here to find their own way, but yeah, reflectors are a funny bunch, I think.
The other thing, you know, if you just look at things objectively, you know, let's look at the structure. Yeah.
Mm.
The reflector has like this Teflon aura. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just Teflon. And what do they do? They reflect back, you know, what is around them. Okay. So that's a reflector. And then we look at the environmental projector, or the MP, and they are designed to be conditioned. They're designed to be completely penetrated, as well at the same time recognizing exactly what the other is, because of our vision can really focus and pierce on that. So we're here to actually feel the environment. You know, the contrasts are immense. You know, it, in a way, the way I would rephrase it, going back to your original point, or how, yeah, you know, it's like, well, we're very close because we're extreme opposites. That's where we're close, because we're such an opposite of each other.
Interesting.
No, it's just mechanics. You know, have you got the perspective to actually look and consider these sorts of things? And you know, obviously, I'm very fortunate in what I sort of become, or what I was dealt with, is that in my vision, you know, I've got PLR DLL, so like Ra's variable, you know, seeing what others don't see. But for me, which was such a probably the biggest hurdle I had to get over or properly digest with my taste cognition, was my vision is in 2.2 genius on a sixth tone. So, you know, my personality self node is 2.2 genius and it's on a sixth tone. So the sharpness of my vision with also that variable in also being in a perfect projector sort of definition on the cross of consciousness, you know, it's just like, what? You know, but it's, you know, I'm not really in my own, as far as I'm aware within myself, um, you know, it's sort of like I'm not here. You know, I am sort of like almost sort of possessed in something which is really entertaining, and life is so much more interesting when I'm being the witness sort of within this thing. But when I'm not able to control who's in my environment or what environment I'm in, and I go into distraction, I go into transference, then I become real fucking bitter and I become the victim. And
Leads me to the next question, man.
okay.
I wanted to ask, so as a projector, the keynotes for a projector
Mm-hmm.
is bitterness or success, saying if you're operating correctly
Mm-hmm.
and you wait for invitation and eventually you get your success, which you described as sunshine, which I actually really like.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think it's a really, really nice metaphor for that. I might use that sometime if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And then if you don't, sorry,
No, I was just saying, yeah, you just quote me.
of course. And then, so if you're trying to be anything but a projector, so if you're trying to initiate or you're trying to be a generator and you're trying to push in and give advice and nobody's asked for it, you're going to meet bitterness. And there's a, I think there's a general misunderstanding that when you get into human design and you start to live your design, that you're never going to feel bitter again or something like that. It's a fantasy, I think, that people have. And it's the same for generator. Oh, we're never going to be frustrated again. I don't think so. I think these are the things that we still meet in our lives. But, well, first of all, I wanted to know if that's the same for you. Do you still feel like, okay, you still have moments of bitterness? But in terms of how are these bitterness and success again different compared to your life now and your life before? Is there more of it? Is there less of it? It's a big question.
Yeah, it's a good question. The way in which I am answering this is there's bitterness which is put upon me from the other, and there's bitterness that I have created myself. And in the same way, there is success, that warmth of sunshine on your face, when it's given from someone else, and then there is also that success when it's sort of you actually did something for yourself without necessarily the other. You know, that everything's binaries. You know, everything's binary. You know, it's like the one certain is that there's a binary there. So that's again where I come from. I'm a 1-4 profile. I don't know if we mentioned that yet. So I'm the floor of both levels of the house, you know. So determining whether the bitterness is a self-induced thing or whether it is actually a bitterness from the outside, that's very different. And that has changed a lot, obviously, from how I was before to how I am now. And obviously, it's interesting how I'm going to be in the future. This is for me part of the joy of this journey is that once you've got the basic grasp, once you're surrendered and you're remaining being surrendered, you don't care what sort of happens, because it's like, oh, what's going to happen? It's exciting, you know. I know enough, given that I've covered holistic analysis and most of the knowledge that's out there, that the mundane is what 90% of this life is about, and 10% is the wow moments, whether they're a good wow, a scary wow, an exciting wow. You've got wow or you've got mundane. And if you can be the witness throughout the mundane, you're more likely to recognize the wow or to experience the wow, because again, being a projector, we're here to glide. We're not here to do anything. We're here to slide into something or slide away from something. It's all about, as you know, especially with your definition, it's about being in the flow and avoiding that resistance. That's what it is. It's a dance, and if you hear the music, if you hear the tone, the music makes you dance. You don't think the dance, the music makes you dance, so I just realizing that I'm blurting because this is my channel and I probably didn't answer your question.
But I like what's coming out of there, so
Oh well, what to do?
I like this metaphor of dancing, and I'm just going to say something about myself here. It's funny, every time I speak with projectors, somehow like the focus always it's really on me. Even though you're the one speaking, but I relate things that you say to me, and it's just a mechanism that happens. But I have an issue with dancing. You see, I've never really been like, I don't know, like it's something that I have been working on for the past maybe a couple of years, ever since I went to India.
Uh-huh.
And this intuitive kind of movement.
Yeah.
And at some point, if I hear music and it takes me, I'm in it, so I'm colliding, right? And then the moment I become aware of it, it changes. I all of a sudden feel all like stiff, and it's like I don't know. And am I doing this because I feel like I should be sexy, or like, there's all kinds of things that come from my mind that are putting resistance to the movement, instead of me just letting go and not giving a shit who's watching, or if anybody's watching. Obviously it's easier to do when I'm alone, but really, like this metaphor of gliding through and dancing through is to me is an ultimate example of, you have to stop giving a shit, you have to stop caring about what your mind thinks you should do, or how you should move, or where you should go, or what you should do. Like, it's really like, to me, it's a direct metaphor of living your design, because you can't get involved. I mean, you can, but then it's gonna fall. So
we've all been at like a wedding or a party or a family function, and there's like a disco, and you got many generations, different ages, and all the rest of it. And we all know what it's like when, that old auntie or those little kids, or it's great to see all this different expression, these different identities that are fulfilling these different roles, Now, the point I'm trying to get to is that, that person that is dancing because they love this song, or they just like to dance. They don't care who's watching. They don't care how fat their ass is or whatever. They are doing it because they're getting that enjoyment. And then you all know the other types that are sort of trying to do the moves, and they're trying to like look cool.
yeah.
But the difference is huge. And this is very much how in a way, I look out at some of the community in human design. You know, again, it's like the buskers. You know, you've got those that are doing it that know how to play that instrument, that are just
Mm.
that natural skill or talent or authenticity, which is, maybe I'll talk about that later, opposed to those that are trying to do something that they don't know what it is that they're trying to do, but they've heard it's good, so they want to do it too. You know,
Mm. Hmm.
and hey
Yeah.
ho, ignorance, open ego is the biggest conditioning aspect on this planet, and it's all simple. You either see it or you don't.
Mm. I like your plant behind you.
My Strelitzia, bird of paradise.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I have two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe about being an individual? So you only have one channel, which is an individual channel, classed as one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been around with a lot of individuals, pure individuals, and I really like them. But because you are all so unique and weird, I want to hear from your weird perspective about what it's like to be an individual, if you want to share.
Yeah, well, I can attempt at least. The other thing with me is that within my life force, I actually have the individuality, uh,
Mm.
23.3, I think. So not only am I a first line with a single channel, um, single definition, individual circuitry, actual half my life force is individuality. Um, and yeah, I'm living in this log cabin on the mountain, miles away from anyone, just on my land, doing whatever I do, and what I end up doing is, I'm not necessarily always in control of what I do. You know, again, when you really get comfortable in this new person that you discover. Now, this is the whole thing about human design, really, is letting go of who you've been made to be or made to become, and reconnecting with that innocence of your childhood, that thing that was not corrupted. Um, and when you get comfortable in that, and you start to feel what you can do and what you can't do, where your stimulation is, where your limitation is, which are two massive keywords in life. That's when you start to be you, and you don't, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, says about me, whether they like me, whether they don't like me. It's none of my fucking business. None of my fucking business. If someone wants to knock on my door or give me a call or bring something to my attention, great. There's an invitation. I'll then consider that invitation, and I will accept it if it's correct for me, or deny it. So you end up just watching the mundane, watching the wow moments. Like everybody, we've all done some crazy shit in our time, and we've all done some boring shit in our time. Um, I I don't spend much time with people. You know, I think it's like 5 weeks ago, the last time I was in Aura with someone. You know,
Wow.
so yeah. I don't know. Maybe just this interview in itself is sort of some of my individualness, but yeah, I do what I do for me, but I don't necessarily actually have an influence in what I do. And I appreciate if there is anyone watching this who's early in their journey, that may sound like really freakish, but hey, you know, um, but that is what it sort of ends up being, that you just get taken, you're in the flow, you know.
Sounds amazing, because I've just been like, I told you, Luca left
Hmm.
for Romania. And my God, it took me like, because we are 9-0, right? So there's definitely something there that people can't get in.
Yeah.
So in a way, I'm kind of protected because we're in the aura all the time, or like we live in the same house. So I can see that there's really not that much that can get in. Like it doesn't take my attention or my response or whatever. And then he's gone, and I'm like, yay, I get some time alone. I'm really happy here. And then I have tons of people messaging me like constantly, wanting to meet up. They have a problem. There's all kinds of stuff that is just coming my way. And of course, I'm like, I'm more open. It's nice to have that. It's nice to get refreshing new energies within my aura. But then at some point, like I think it was Saturday, I was exhausted. I'm like, fuck this shit. I really want to be alone. And I realized that I just need so much time alone. Like I really, really want it. I need it. It's healthy for me. And I told a friend of mine who wanted to go for a walk with me, and I'm like, dude, I've come to a point where I have to just say no to everybody. I'm gonna have to take some time with myself, leave my phone, not look at it, because I am gonna need some time to reset. I mean, he's been gone for 5 days, and I feel like I haven't had a moment. So, listening to you saying it was 5 weeks since you've been with, or do you want to swap places with me? Because I'm really like, it sounds so therapeutic to me. Like it really, really does. I could really do with some,
Yeah.
like nobody wanting anything from me for a while.
Yeah.
It's really exhausting.
But I'm not sure if you recall, but like when you mentioned, like when he was departing and stuff, and when we're to do this, I sort of said, well, you need 72 hours to be by
Mm,
yourself, to get by yourself from
mm,
that deconditioning of that bond, So
yeah.
yeah, honor yourself.
Anyway, enough about that. So last question.
Mhm.
Are you ready?
Ready. That's a
Okay.
great word.
If you had one message to give to the humanity or anybody watching this video,
Hmm.
what would that be?
Um,
One message.
well, be ready. You know, um,
Okay.
because being a projector, especially, but it does have its relevance to every type. You know, be ready. You know, it's not about what you actually end up achieving, not achieving, what you do or you don't do. Are you ready for it? Are you ready? You know,
Ready for
because
what? If somebody, I might know what you mean, but somebody else might want to know ready for what? Because there's always that follow up.
yeah, the thing is that the art of waiting, you know,
Mm,
it really should be being, not waiting. Again, coming back to a dictionary
mm,
required for words and or the way to express words within certain HD content. You know, when you're being, you know, you're just doing whatever, but you're sort of aligned that if something happens, whatever it is, you can sort of say yes or no. You know, you can actually hang on a minute. Whatever it is, and being ready does take this sort of self love, this authenticity. You know, I don't care how people are. I can talk about any subject, whatever it is, bizarre, mundane, whatever, as long as they're being authentic, you know,
Mm.
and that authenticity, you know, if you're being authentic, then you're ready, you know. Um, if that didn't make sense, then I guess that you're not hearing my frequency anyway. But that's what came out of me.
Yeah, there's I have contemplated this waiting versus being quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not lately, but I did do that at some point, and it's really true. It is more like being, because the waiting always, well, the mind wants to wait for something, which actually comes to the point of, well, being ready. But the waiting for always indicates that there's something else apart from this moment, something beyond this moment, and it's not really about that. What I think that Ra has done with the waiting is actually kind of a clever trick, because the way I see the waiting is that it puts a stop for a learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the first thing you got to do. It's like your mind is always on a momentum to do the same things it's used to doing, or trying to push you to do the same thing. So if somebody says, wait, it's the first thing that you do. What? And it stops the pattern. So in that way, I kind of understand the the word waiting and the whole thing around that. But ultimately, I'm not sure it's working in the long term, because you come to a point in your process at some point you realize, well, how long am I going to wait for? And then it turns into being,
Mm-hmm.
and then whatever evolves from that. But these are kind of, it's really funny, because being ready, waiting for whatever invitation, response, and being, they kind of go under the same umbrella in my vision. But they are slightly different variations, and they kind of, I don't know, there's something different about these things, obviously. But to me, it's kind of the trick for the design.
I used to say, like, you know, you wouldn't wait at a bus stop if you didn't know that a bus was actually coming.
Yeah.
You know, because okay, yeah, it's a bus stop, so
Mm.
obviously a bus does come at some point, but
Mm.
if there's no schedule there, or if it's a bank holiday, or if it's the middle of the night,
Yeah.
why would you wait? You know, and that is part of the surrender, you know, and for me, in what I witness, it doesn't it doesn't necessarily matter how much of this information someone actually knows. What really makes a difference to me, especially with their tone, is how much they're surrendering to what they do know. You know,
Mm.
those that really, again, authentic, you know, those that are really surrendering, those that are really trying or experimenting or testing, that's where you get through this journey. You don't get it in how much you know or you don't know or whatever or blah blah blah. It's about that surrendering.
Mm.
You know, and again, being being ready, being authentic. You know, are very much all congregated together at the core of that.
When I think of a surrender, I have a perfect example here, which is my dog.
Mm-hmm.
He's he's so surrendered. He just like whatever. It's like he doesn't fight against anything that happens to him.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Like I can brush his teeth, and he's kind of like, he doesn't really like it, but then he's kind of surrendered, and he's like, just letting me do it. And it's like I don't know, like he is, this term that you use, this gliding. My dog glides through life,
Yeah.
and it's really beautiful to see.
Yeah.
Like everybody loves him. He's so, I don't, well, surrendered
Yeah.
to life.
Yeah.
and grateful for every little thing that, you know, like happens. And I always say that he's my best teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have a mind, which is a blessing for him, I guess. And makes it a lot easier, I guess. But still, you know, I really learn a lot from him.
Mm. Yeah, seeing, you know, seeing it is the big teacher, you know. You know, when we have a situation like this, when you're talking one-on-one with someone, that's when you're alive.
Mm.
When you're by yourself, you're just in mental masturbation land, you know, because that's all it is. You know, there is, the mind is only good for two things, you know, measuring and calculating. That's it. You know,
Mm.
your mind is not, you know, my mind is not my friend, it's your friend. Your mind is my friend, but it's not your friend.
Mm.
You know, measure and calculate, you know, as I think I told you before, that in my journey, that at times when I'm sort of really like not self and active mind and everything, you know, I'll get a box of matches and I'll throw them on the counter, and I'll sort of count how many matches there are, and then I will organize them into like groups of 10, and you know, purely like throwing a dog a bone.
Mm.
Give your mind something to measure, give your mind something to calculate, because then it's had its walk, and then it will have its nap, you know, and
Mm.
then it won't interfere in your life, you know. So there is ways of which people can um, harmonize with what we've got, with the good things and the bad things, you know. So it isn't just all about, you know, being perfect. You know, I personally have a distaste to people who avoid not self. Now, not self has taught me so much. Conditioning has taught me so much. There is no bad conditioning, in my opinion. You know, you either learn from it, or you encounter it again.
Mm.
That's the simple mechanics in my perspective.
Do you want to add something else to this?
Um, well,
You had something.
I don't know. It's I'd probably just really adding my pet hates to the community. You know, given that this is an opportunity where I have a voice or have an opportunity, um, I just Hansel and Gretel. You know, Hansel and Gretel is a story where they were able to navigate themselves there by following the landmarks. You know, like I said, with the sailors and the stars and stuff, and the way people that think they know something, or they're trying to prove something, they change what was already there. And I know Ra said this information was going to mutate over time and everything, but I'm not talking about mutation. I'm talking about giving people the landmarks so they can find their way.
Mm.
When people do relabel or adjust these things, then everybody gets lost, you know. And examples of this are like people promoting that naps are a good thing. You know, it's like naps and sleeping promote the not self and the conditioning more than anything else. You know, uh, if you are feeling you have to nap, then take the message your body is telling you that you're not looking after your sleep regime. You are not preparing for sleep correctly enough. You're not, you know, going to bed maybe early enough or whatever it is, but you've got to alter your battery care regime for the next day, you know, because when you do go horizontal, you receive the neutrino stream in a different orientation. It complexes things which I think most of the newbies do not comprehend. And again, they're only following this because somebody said this somewhere, and well, I'm going, oh yeah, that's good. And all this does is just promote the not self, the open ego and all this sort of stuff. And I don't like the way people are trying to change something that doesn't need changing, you know. Um, so there's that, the splenic, yes, you know. I've spent probably a month's worth of my life going through all of the literature and all of the recordings that I have, which is fairly extensive. There is not a single thing within the mechanics that shows the spleen can give a yes.
Mm-hmm.
I have attempted with experienced people in the community that are within my network anyway, to discuss the 9 different ways of which the splenic hit can occur, because again, there's 9 different ways of which the spleen can become defined. There is potential there where something could be learned. And after all, we've only got another 6-7 years of investigating. In 6 or 7 years time, we're never going to be able to find out ever again. Well, why don't we actually use this opportunity with the first line background frequency, where we can investigate? We can do the how, because we're going to the 6th and the who. So things are going to change. Why don't we find out now? Whilst we can. The spleen is all about, is it safe or not? And it's a very, very weak awareness center, or the weakest. And it only really gives you a flinch or a trigger or a hit when it's saying no, not safe. There's absolutely no abstract associated with the spleen. And having said all these mechanical things, I am aware that the spleen is a very, very mystical thing. It is very mysterious. I'm not taking that away from it. But again, in regards to navigating and orientating yourself, it's very unfair that those that have learned something disrupt for everybody else that's going to come to this information following it. And I just feel, as a 1-4, obviously, without our authority, obviously being the MP and stuff, that this is something that really should be discussed more than what it is, because these are the main fundamental building blocks of the way any child of the future can actually find some satisfaction, some success, and some peace, surprise.
That's interesting. I can kind of see what you're saying. Never really gave it much of a thought in terms of the spleen. The only thing that comes to my mind is, like, I imagine. Okay, so my sister has a spleen defined. She's a sleeping phoenix with my channel 596, and she has the 1648, and she's very intuitive, like really intuitive. And there was an example that she gave me once. She was going somewhere to her friends or whatever, and she just saw her charger on the table. She never carries it around or anything, but she just felt the to take it. Just took it and didn't know why. And then ended up, I think there was some kind of a problem or whatever, and she ran out of emergency. She ran out of battery, and nobody had a charger. And then she had it with her, and then she could charge her phone and call somebody. So I know her authority is not splenic. Obviously, she's emotional. But this is an example where that splenic hit was present somehow in response as a generator. I guess she saw it. She felt the impulse to take it. So I'm just trying to relate that. Like, this is for my own understanding. So talking about spleen can't say yes. How would you describe that with that perspective?
Yeah, brilliant. Because this is the other aspect which I didn't mention, is that you can have a spleen defined, but it not be your authority. Okay. Now, you can have the spleen defined and it be your authority. And then, regardless of whether you have either of these or you don't have the spleen defined, everybody has intuition. And I'm not even talking about the 57th gate, which probably is a gate where there's more intuition than any other gate. But obviously, the whole openness of the body graph is intuitive, you know, so everybody has the ability to have that intuition, regardless of whether your authority is not. And again, if I'm making sense, this is where the whole situation is just a messy goo. And I'm very glad I'm not new to this system with splenic authority trying to decipher this, because you typically, or what I've observed is that you've got a lot of people with the surrender, the 2644, so saying, oh yeah, I get the split. Oh yeah, I get it. Yeah. You know, it's like, well, okay, fine. That's your perspective, but the mechanics don't actually show that this is true. You know, and you're obviously being powered from that heat of that ego, and you are here to prove something. Yeah. And again, don't let me be misunderstood. I'm not saying that this is this and this is this and this is this and you've got to believe me. What I'm saying is that, hey everybody, this is really confusing. It is not clearly defined. We've still got 6 or 7 years left where we can have some communion, where we can actually assist things. You know, Ra's dead, we're alive. The information is here. Let's see what we can if we try. And I'm not saying that we're going to find Eureka. I'm not trying to rediscover the wheel. What I'm trying to do is to bring some efficiency to these so-called analysts that are around, that actually do not misguide people. They just take people's money. Yeah, it's just, you know, there is so much. Well, I'm full of wonder and awe with the whole thing, and you know, I've been working on a project for about 3-4 years now with this whole 7-9 centered business, and going into the actual mapping the last 140 years of this plane and how it all interconnects with the cognition of the variables, you know, with life. And, you know, it's just outstanding. The beauty and the nature of everything. And, you know, I'm also obviously fairly biased in my interest in the human design, because I'm obviously about the structure. I'm about the efficiency. And I'm not really interested about human design per se, you know, talking about egos and spleens and stuff. Yeah, you know, interesting. But for me, it's nothing compared to the form principle, you know. Actually going into the form principle, you know, and understanding this complete bias and the triggers and pauses and actions and everything, you know, this is potentially how I can be an individual and sustain having hardly any human contact, you know, because I don't need it, you know. I don't need it unless it's correct, and I only allow it when it's correct, you know, because in the meantime, I've got the joys of discovering, you know, the insects and the plants and the interaction, you know. I don't know how many times that I've gone over and looked into this and just considered it, and just the energy and the fulfillment that you can get from some simple aspects if you just allow it. And just see where this measuring mind of yours can take you. You don't have to do anything with it, you know, but just be entertained. Allow yourself, give yourself permission, be ready, be authentic in the slightest little thing. Because when you do start to experiment with this, when you do start to tap into this, you realize, you know, you don't need that phone, you don't need this thing, you don't need that, you know, you actually just need time for yourself. You need to honor your process. You need to pay more attention to the environment around you. You know, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. Just see it. Just be aware.
Made me realize I watched. No, I didn't watch. I listened to the plant lecture just the other day, and you know, I'm into plants. I have like, well, last I counted, I have like 80 plants here. I did have like 150 in the summertime. And you know, I'm always drawn to that, and I'm drawn to nature and the trees and stuff. And then, you know, obviously after hearing the lecture about the plant design, like it's opened up my eyes. Like I used to walk through the forest here and thinking, wow, these are so magical. Like I can really feel the magic. That's all I could describe it then. Like there's certain energy in there. It's really like mysterious and all that. And I used to think that I'm fantasizing, you know, like it's a nice dream, you know. And then after hearing that plant lecture, it's like, damn, I wasn't wrong. It's really that there's all these personality crystals here, just ready to whatever, you know, like they're here to adapt to their environment. And how therapeutic then can be, like to be able to see and to for me, because I am such an earth person, you know, I'm very much about the nature and the form principle and like you say as well, like in human design, I don't really care about the knowledge. I care about living it. I care about being here, watching.
Definitely.
And I can see, especially after that lecture, the real relationship that we could have with the earth that could really, like, if more people stop doing what their mind tells them they should do and actually just were just present to their lives and saw the earth and all the magic and the wonders that we have here and took that in a way, like how healing that can be.
Yeah.
And really, like I don't know, like I have an abstract mind. Okay, I'm person. My variables on the personality side are right, so it's really hard for me to kind of explain everything that I see. But it's really that I see such a connection with all of this. You know, this whole living, being correct, dancing through life, being one with the earth. You know, all of that to me is just the same thing. Like it's really the thing that is going to keep us alive.
I think I may have mentioned to you in previous chats, but you know, truth and simplicity, you know, soil is simple, you know, and grass is truth. You know, you only get grass growing in soil. You only find truth when things are simple. Um, it's the way it is, you know. If you are fortunate enough to have this information and have time to actually go into this more for yourself, you know, it it, it is boundless, you know, but you can only really get there with that being simple and surrendering, you know, just being authentic. You know, you're not here to change the world. None of us are, yeah. But we all have the potential to actually understand how this world sort of does sort of function and operate, and etc. And to be able to tap into that's living. you know, going down the pub with your mates and this, that, and the other. Yeah, it can be fun, but it's obviously conditioning, and at the end of the day, how fulfilling was that when you could have potentially, been at home discovering something, and what you then discover helps enable you make decisions every day for the rest of the year and your life, etc. You know, um, people do not know now. People do not know how to navigate for themselves. This is the basic of human design. It's how you can navigate, how you can make a decision for yourself. There's two things in life. How other people affect you, and how do you make a decision? That's it. It's those two things. And when you consider some of the mechanics and the aspects, that we're like 2/3 open, we're 1/3 defined. The whole game is rigged. It's rigged for us all to be conditioned, for us all to be influenced. The program has got no interest at all, apart from creating something different, creating something new. Doesn't care. Our bodies don't even care about us. It is just this phenomenal synthesis of a system that operates, and within it there is these tolerances of where it will still allow things to operate, but if we start going too far out, it will bring us back in. Life will change things for us dramatically, or for that person, if we start wandering too way off. But it is just awe-inspiring what this knowledge has brought, and we are all fortunate to have this crack to the code, as I call it. The Maya doesn't like us having this. We are obviously all fighting against sort of the program itself, because we're actually following RSNA. We're actually being able to look at each other's genetics and our combinations and experiment with this. It doesn't like that, and this is where it is difficult and lonely for anyone on their human design journey to, at times, to try to experiment, to try to talk about things that they want to, because the whole world is not self, and each and every one of us on our own journey is completely in transference at least 4 hours every day. So to recognize and just understand that it's not an easy ride. The whole game is rigged against us. But if we are ready, if we are authentic, we can actually get those wow moments amongst the mundane, and that is what can flourish us. That is what can inspire us and fulfill us in what it is that we are experiencing.
It's really interesting that you say that, because now what I relate to, when you say be ready, I relate that to to the fact that anybody who really, really gets human design has been or is really depressed. It's because I was ready. I remember. Can I tell you what happened? It was January 2013, and I was so fucking exhausted. My life was not going anywhere. I was frustrated, I was exhausted, and I hated myself. And I went to bed. I think I had an argument with my boyfriend at that time, and I was just like, there was some kind of a knowledge in me. It's like, this can't go on like this. This just isn't working. I'm a third line. So I see that it's not working. And I went to bed and I laid there, and I was just like, open my arms like this, like, fucking hell, I'm done. Give it to me. Whatever it is, I'm ready. Just bring it here. Whatever, but not this. And then a few months later, I went to France and I had an immersion to human design. And I'm like, I recognized, I linked these two moments.
Yeah, yeah.
It came because I was ready.
Yeah.
I was ready to try anything but whatever I was living. So I can see this. And I remember Ross said that, the people who used to come to his readings and stuff were people who were like, oh, tried everything and nothing else had worked or something in their self
Yeah.
awareness trip, whatever.
The- the- the-
So yeah.
Obviously the melancholy depression thing, and obviously with pressure centers, again, terminology is what I would just bring up here. What word people are using can be mistranslated or misexplained. But yeah, it's gone. No, that's it. Got it.
Okay.
I had a point in my journey, and I've had 3 or 4 sort of mini breakdowns in my journey, and I think most people do have 1 or 2, as they decondition. But there is an aspect, or a lot of truth into it, is that when you don't care anymore. You just don't care. When you sort of give up, then it's sort of like bring. What?
Yeah.
If something happens the moment you don't care anymore. But I would also, this purist that sort of I am with the knowledge, there is so many 7-centered HD goers, not 9-centered. The 9-centered people, certainly which I'm aware of so far, is very few. And this is the whole point about being the witness or being the victim. Yes, we all have, as I mentioned, 4 hours a day, we're all in transference, even with SNA. SNA that can't save you all the time, the aspects with how color and tone work. But if you're being the witness, you just watch it. It's not personal. When you're being the victim, you are taking it on as personal. So you're not being the witness. You're either the witness or you're the victim. When you understand that 90% of the time, this is the mundane, it is repetition, it's all cycles. Yeah, there's never going to be any moment in time that's the same as any other moment in time. So things are always different, but you have got these cycles, you have got these patterns which are operating within it. And, it's the mundane. It's not supposed to be a walk in the park, you know? We've all got plenty of books on our bookshelf, yeah? And we sit there complaining that we've got nothing to do and it's boring. But when we do actually pick up a book and start reading it, we're entertained. Maybe a bad analogy, but things are simple. And it does always come back time and time again to the perspective or the binary with the 2 ends of the spectrum. There's the this and the that.
There's something that I tell people quite a bit when I teach yoga, especially yin yoga.
Mm-hmm.
When I see people, trying to get comfortable, and they're not getting comfortable, and I can see that their mind is busy by the way that they move their hands or, twiddle around a bit, and I can see that the mind is bored. And I got this because you were saying about the book analogy. So the mind complains that there's nothing to do. Yeah. So the mind is bored, but it's one way that the mind is resisting all the things that it could see if it just let go. This is how I see it. So I see the boredom as a really like one of the keynotes or like signposts for saying the mind is resisting the life or the nothing or the stopping, because it thinks that there's nothing beyond its own analysis or whatever. And so one of the things to recognize is when your mind does this. And it's not just the boredom. There's many different ways that you can catch it. But, this it's a form of victimization for yourself. I am poor me, I'm bored, I have nothing to do.
Yeah, that is where the mind sticks its nose in, because it doesn't have anything to do. It never has done. What would you do if you were there seeing everything that's going on but not allowed to do anything? You're at least going to give a running commentary, aren't you? Just to satisfy your own sort of boredom again. And this is where, I said, like, I used to throw a box of matches on the floor and count it, because you can give your mind things to do. We all know that the mind is bored. It hasn't got anything to do apart from measuring and calculating. So this is one thing which I did for myself, regularly counting things, or just doing completely futile, pointless things, like when you're in the bathroom, like working out the diagonal patterns and the numbers of the tiles on the wall. Something which is completely useless, but something which can get that mind's like tail wagging like a happy dog, and then it feels like it's, you've been able to like make it think that it's your friend, by giving it something to do. So then it's less likely to interfere with an important decision, or something where you are paying attention. And you know what I mean? It's like we've all got this experiment for us. We can experiment, we can try things, but people don't want to try things for themselves. They want to have someone else tell them what they should be doing. And because of that, that's where this Hansel and Gretel scenario go up, that the whole thing gets misplaced and misguided.
I relate that, giving you, like, I like what you're saying, that, giving your mind something to do, like look for patterns or count something. But I really relate it to more of a defined ajna, defined head kind of thing, because I know Luca does this. He does it a lot. His mind is always working, so he has to give it something to do. Whereas for me, it's not so much of an issue. Like I could just be bored and see my mind being bored, and I don't really have to do anything with that. I don't have to necessarily put it to work, because I don't have a mind in that way. So it's open. But it's really useful to know, because I'm just realizing, there's always this thing like, I have my experience, and my mind naively thinks that everybody else has got the same experience. So, then I think that everybody thinks like that. And of course it's not like that. So it's really useful to know that maybe for people who have head definition or ajna definition, it's really useful to do something like this. And like sometimes in yoga, I use these techniques like, okay, I can see that they're a bit moving around or whatever. I might tell them to count the breathing. So count in for 4 and out for 8 or something like that. And I can see that works for some. It doesn't really work for me. I just feel like, for fucking hell, do I still have to count? I just want to be, so it's like sometimes I give people an option to do that. If you find that it's difficult for you to let go, then you could do this. And so, some people will take that on and others won't, but it's a really good point. It's really useful thing to learn about the head definition. It's constantly working. It's there.
Obviously, there's a few ways of it working, as you say, with the defined ajna or not, but
yeah,
I think especially with the variable, obviously that has a huge bearing. But this is one thing with environmental projectors or MPs. We know about the mind. We really know about the mind because we are so mindy. Given that our authority is in the environment, the measuring and calculating really becomes such a tool. So if you're really just like putting out your spidey senses, as I call it, my spidey senses, you just go around and you're getting all the information come to you. Yeah. A reflector doesn't do that. A reflector reflects everything. Again, the duality difference. But people look at an MP and think, oh, I'm not going to speak to them because I've only got one or two open centers and I know how much trouble it causes me. They must be really lost. And yeah, a lot of MPs are really lost at the beginning, because it does take a while. Plus the fact everybody talks about soundboarding, not enough people talk about the environmental aspect where you really can, that's where you really get to learn and understand things. But the point I'm coming to is that human design is all about the mind, yeah? Because you've got to understand how the not self mind operates to shut that up, to de-energize that, so then you can actually allow yourself to listen to the body. And it's very interesting in what I observe that people don't actually recognize the MPs, that they are the type to guide projectors. Yeah, projectors are here to be guided by MPs, and let alone all other types, because they know about the mind. They know about the very thing better than anybody else, which is causing a problem for all the other types.
That's a really nice way of see. Again, I'm just having to make a reference to my life. When I used to do massages, I ended up doing a lot of massages for other massage therapists. So I had a lot of people that came to me, and I actually found it more rewarding. Like I felt like I was better suited for that job than for massaging the other people. And I can, because of that experience that I had, I relate that to what you're saying about MPs being really good at guiding other projectors. And I know it doesn't really have a reference as such, but I can just maybe see what you mean, because I had an experience like that in another level of life. So I like that. I like that perspective.
Yeah, but this is what Ra said. This isn't just me. I've just experienced how that people generally don't. People are too interested in being emotionally satisfied. That don't care what the profile, whatever the definition is. People want to be emotionally satisfied. People are not prepared to wait for an actual analytical, methodical calculation or answer, because even though they know that's true, that's not what they're looking for. And people would rather carry on suffering in that search to be emotionally satisfied, rather than just sort of saying, okay, I don't like it, but this is what it is, I'm going to give it a try. And you see that in life in all sorts of ways, and you certainly see it in the HD community.
That's very true. I have really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
It's always like it's nice to get such a different perspective from somebody. Like we are so different. Like what I like about our communication is that we both have only one channel. Okay, so we're both really open, so we relate in that, and the openness, and we both have an open G, let's say. So I really get when you talk about the environmental stuff, because my G is wide open, so I see through that. Yet we are so different. You're a mental projector, I'm emotional generator. You're pure individual, I'm tribal. And you know, like there's so much that is really not similar at all.
Yeah, but
So it gives me this completely different perspective, but I relate to you.
mm,
And
yeah,
that's really nice.
yeah, you know, I've always enjoyed our interactions and stuff, and you know, for me, it is like I'm here like a librarian, you know. I'm here in this library all alone, all the information, all the understanding, because being a 1-4 MP on the cross of consciousness, that's what I'm about. You know, I had to learn every fucking thing in this system before I could really understand anything about this system, you know. So I've gone there through and all done it, and along the way, you know, the tornado aspect has happened, and people have like done whatever they've done, and you know, I'm sort of very alone for a 1-4, but I'm here with all this stuff, and I look out at all these tribal people like yourself, all these clicky gang. Oh yes, you know. Oh yes, yes. Oh. You know, and all of that. But I
I'm
don't.
not like that though.
What,
But anyway,
no, but I think you get what I'm sort of
I
hinting.
get what you mean. Yeah.
And I don't see them talking about anything actually in the mechanics, you know. And yeah, I'm biased because I'm all about the structure and efficiency. You know, it is the mechanics that I'm loyal to. Um, and it's again, this is where like the busker analogy comes from. I hear them making a noise, but that noise is not going to help the continuity. Is not going to help, you know, the landmarks being unspoiled for future visitors. Um, you know, this is what's uh, it's, it's just the suffering of which Ra had, the suffering of which everybody still has, and yet there's no need for that. There is the information there. There is enough people in this community to actually collate together, to actually do something of assistance that can be added to everything that Ra did, to be efficient. And it's not, because too many people want the attention, want the party, want to just make some noise and then get the center of attention, rather than, you know, as I try to do, I try to plant seeds. This is something a mental projector should always do. You know, we don't tell people the answer. We sort of mention something that leads them to get the answer themselves, because that way they will really get it. You know, if I just tell them the answer, it's not necessarily going to help them the next time they need to remember that. But from my experience, I don't see much fertile soil around in the community where seeds can actually be planted. You know, it does happen, and yes, of course, it's all based upon the fractal, but it's such a shame that, in my perspective, HD is dying quickly, and this HD2 thing that's, you know, expanding dramatically, you know, and it's not to my taste.
So thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah,
And thank you for recording it for me, because
yeah.
everything's
Interviewing with
just
all myself. Okay.